constant respiratory problems that are now epidemic. Is there any connection between this and the growing epidemic rates of other human diseases that are proven to be connected to highly toxic heavy metal exposure? Lab tests from around the globe have long since proven a mountain of heavy metals like aluminum, barium, and strontium are raining down on all of us. These metals are the primary elements named in climate engineering patents. Yes, this is connected to the dirty, dingy, often checkerboard striped toxic mess that we see in our skies day in and day out. If you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. You're still breathing this contamination with every breath, and it's building up in your body. Several dozen lab tests from Shasta and Siskiyou counties alone, about 70, I believe, prove this beyond any shadow of a doubt. Why aren't we being told? Why don't meteorologists and institutions like the Weather Channel say a word about climate engineering? Because they're owned by corporations like Blackstone and Bain Capital, corporations all connected to the umbilical of the global power structure. Does anyone believe the paid actors at the Weather Channel would tell the truth about climate engineering, knowing their jobs, or perhaps much more, depend on them saying whatever they're told to say? Perhaps we could ask Weather Channel meteorologist Nicholas Wiltgen. Unfortunately, though, we can't, because he died last month in what Fox News said was, quote, an apparent suicide. His car was crashed through an Atlanta parking garage and plowed into an adjacent hotel. That's a strange way to commit suicide. But perhaps let's ask the meteorologists at the National Weather Service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But no again, because virtually all the National Weather Service and NOAA government employees are still under a federal gag order. Don't believe me, please. Investigate it for yourself. If you're willing to look at the truth, if you want to see meteorologists going to unimaginable lengths of lying to try and explain away the completely unprecedented and completely engineered weather scenarios that are now the norm, watch the Weather Channel for a while. Connect the dots. Watch the behavior of the Weather Channel actors as they give truly an ever more complex and implausible fabricated explanation for weather scenarios that are historically unprecedented and meteorologically impossible without the climate engineering factor. Again, we have engineered snowstorms happening in the West with the center of those storms, like one I mentioned last week, Winter Storm, quote, Kayla, the center of the low pressure of a, quote, winter storm pushing 80 degrees with tornadoes on the, quote, warm side of the storm. Where is our sense of reason? This is not normal. We have massive temperature whiplash fluctuations from 50, 60 degrees in a single day. This is extremely devastating to the biosphere. And this can't happen naturally. It's from chemical ice nucleation related to weather modification. Please look it up. Look up every term I state. You'll find lots of data if you choose to look. As the public wakes up to the climate engineering nightmare, the crimes of climate engineering, I believe they'll hold accountable as accomplices all those who have lied to hide the geoengineering insanity. Perhaps trials like those held in Nuremberg are coming, one would hope. If you still refuse to believe weather warfare is going on over your head every single day, stand by. As I said before, you'll believe it soon enough.
Aircraft making a condensation trail is very similar in many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale, you create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually condensation trails.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30. It takes high altitude, around 30,000 feet plus. There's carbon dioxide and water vapor in that exhaust. That turns to ice crystals, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. Those white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal. They're not natural. There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal.
Parts of this presentation. Geoengineering, called climate remediation, that's the same thing. Climate remediation does not mean that someone's going to do something about your climate and stop droughts and stop floods or do something drastic. Climate remediation means solar radiation management. It means that we're going to put up particles and chemicals like sulfur or aluminum oxide, which are supposedly going up to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. I'm going to talk about the implications for several things as I go through the presentation, but I want you to know that these words are real, that the words that you're going to hear from me are a way to manipulate us into not knowing what the word means and therefore not being able to empower ourselves and take action. So as I go through this presentation, I want all of you to think about what actions you can take. And I'd like you can't probably, I don't know if you can read it, but it says, how do you like your skies, your weather, natural or man-made? And some of them you can look up and see. The photograph here shows a sky picture that was taken over Las Vegas, Nevada. And it's got man-made clouds in it. It's got persistent jet contrails. It's got white haze in it. And that's what our skies are going to look like all the time. If some of these activities that are ongoing are allowed to continue, we will have days in which we don't see direct sunlight at all reaching the Earth and benefiting us. And we're seeing this now in many cases. You're seeing the clouds that you see are not real. They are man-made. And the jets, according to everything we know, the jets produce these types of clouds, and these types of clouds, NASA, the U.S. government, many agencies, Stanford University studies, all talk about as being man-made clouds. In other words, they're not formed by real weather fronts coming in and in other words, the real climate cycle. So they're man-made. So some of what you're going to see in the skies from now on are man-made, and you will be able to identify and talk about them. Geoengineering. The U.S. House of Commons, UK Parliament report on geoengineering defines the term geoengineering to describe activities specifically and deliberately designed to affect a change in the global climate with the aim of minimizing or reversing man-made climate change. This was their report on March 10th, and this is in 2010. This was last year. The U.S. House of Representatives Science and Technology Committee met and held hearings in 2009 and 2010 on geoengineering. It was not broadcast on C-SPAN. It was not broadcast by the media. The media didn't cover this issue, but I certainly was aware of it and started to talk about geoengineering. Right now, the U.S. House of Representatives and the UK Parliament are working together. They signed an agreement. The agreement is online, and you can read it. All of these documents are on my website, agreeing that they were going to go forward and work on global geoengineering governance. What I want to say about global geoengineering governance is that they're talking about doing experiments, putting chemicals, particles, ocean iron fertilization, many schemes in order to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth, or to create, in ocean iron fertilization, fake algae blooms, which is harmful. They know it's harmful to the oceans, but what they want to do is they say, well, it's going to reduce the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This is absolutely nuts. The impact on the oceans already has been some concern from the international standpoint. Right now, I can modify your weather. I can hire a company. I can modify your weather. I can initiate a weather modification program over your city, over your county, over your state. company I hire will enhance the snow, enhance the rain, dissipate the clouds. I can put you in a drought because we have the technology, and it's been with us since the 1940s. The United States has been openly modifying and mitigating the weather since the 1940s. They've had hurricane experiments. The documentation is all online. There's many histories of weather modification. So what happens is that we have a military that's modifying the weather. The jets, according to NASA studies, according to NOAA, according to Stanford University, when they produce the man-made clouds, they modify your weather. They change it. And so what happens is you may get rain, you may not get rain. They can cloud up your skies, but there's no weather front that came in. A lot of times when your meteorologist and your weather report says, well, there's going to be cloudy skies and there's going to be rain 3 days from now, we know that the jets are going to come over and cover our skies in man-made clouds. They can even see them, and they can produce rainfall out of them, or not, depending. So this is what's going on. The Earth's atmosphere is being used as a physics laboratory for experiments, multiple experiments without our consent, without our knowledge. Even some of your elected officials don't even know. So some of the information that I'm giving you, they don't know anything about because there's no lobbyist educating them on this topic except to educate them to promote and do more of this type of technology.
Peterson is an environmental impact analyst and founder of California Skywatch. Today, Rosalind is a leader in the fight to expose the true nature of the chemicals being sprayed in our skies. She has compiled extensive data documenting the ongoing geoengineering and weather modification programs contaminating our skies, water, and food supply.
My name is Rosalind Peterson, and I was born and raised in Mendocino County in California. I was on a working farm in Mendocino County and grew up on a working farm. So I have a background in agriculture. I could drive a cat tractor. I could do the irrigation systems. I decided to take environmental studies and planning course at Sonoma State University, where I got my degrees. After some training, I became an agriculture crop loss adjuster, which meant that if there were any crops that failed in California for any reason, crop loss adjusters were sent by the state of California.
Our children, who we owe our lives to, all of us, especially those who have made the decision to have children, we don't own our lives. We owe them to our children and to all the children of the once thriving, now dying planet Earth. So how's the global economy doing? I've talked about this in previous shows, most shows. For those that are still blindly fixed on the global economic facade, forget about it and move on to something that matters. The notion of endless global economic expansion was always a complete delusion. And it's not collapsing in some sort of cyclical fashion at this time. It's collapsing in a manner from which it will not return. We are not in some sort of cycle that's going to somehow magically bounce back. As stated in previous episodes, the implosion of the biosphere and nature's ability to produce will guarantee the already unfolding economic meltdown. And here's a few recent headlines on that front that we don't see from our corporate mainstream media, whose job it is to pacify us and put us to sleep. One headline: a whiff of panic. Global meltdown progressing. Second headline: European bloodbath spills over to U.S. markets. Deutsche Bank and cocoa bonds collapse. Shares at record low. Another headline: European banks face major cash crunch. Another headline: Day of reckoning. The collapse of the too big to fail banks in Europe is here. Another: fear hits Japanese banks. Nikkei plunges. 10-year yield negative for first time ever. What's that mean? A negative yield. It means they're giving money away. They're paying you to take their money. This is the sign of a dying paradigm, absolutely in its death throes. Negative yield rates. And we're about to enter the same territory in the U.S. It's coming. Another headline, capital flight intensifies in Italy and Spain. Curiously, money flows into French banks. People are scurrying for any sort of safe cover. Good luck finding it. Two more headlines. The return of a crisis. Suddenly, banks everywhere are in deep trouble. Final headline, Sears Holding Corporation, that's SHLD, speeds up store closings after disappointing holiday season. Things are not rosy. We just have a massive population looking through rose-colored lenses. That's all. Trouble's not just coming, it's here. It's now. The downward slide will continue to accelerate on all fronts. No matter the season or occasion on the ground, the climate engineering fallout continues to rain a chemical cocktail of contamination down in the entire web of life. And I would ask again, how long can we hold our breath? Of all the issues we face, why do I keep habitually coming back to this issue? And I'll cover more issues in a moment here. But again, no matter what happens to the economy, no matter what happens on many other fronts, we have to be able to breathe. How many other public health and welfare threats are being covered up by the very agencies and experts that are tasked with discovering and disclosing these threats? How many people do any of us know that actually behave in a way that truly corresponds with what they claim their convictions to be? How many? The sad, pitiful truth is this: the vast majority of the so-called public protection personnel are completely dependent on the paychecks and pensions and perceived illusion of personal security they receive from their paymasters. Such honorless individuals give willfully their blind obedience to these paymasters. Many would ask, who exactly is at the top of the money-controlled chain of tyranny? And on that question, the answer is this: all roads lead to the central bankers, who can and are printing whatever amount of money they feel they need in order to carry out any and every form of tyranny imaginable. How many Americans are there who have any idea whatsoever about the monetary system and how it actually works? Will our corporate-controlled media be allowed to black out issues of critical importance? It will come down to this: it's up to us, the citizens of Northern California and elsewhere, to picket in the parking lots until the people at institutions like KRCR and the Record Searchlight, our local newspaper, decide to stop blacking out critical stories and start telling the truth. Again, the weathermen at KRCR, to the weathermen, if you can't talk about the climate engineering issue, tell us. If that's not the case, why would you continue to avoid addressing this issue in any way, shape, or form, no matter how high the community concern grows? We would simply like to know, for example, how you know that the skies will be mostly sunny days in advance